Your Jobs podcast. I'm your host Fahad Jobswala, and I'm student and interview captain at Rehan School Online Academy. I welcome to all of you with another amazing podcast where I have Dab Creer. Dab Creer is such a joyful and very kind lady. She hosts the Business Power Hour podcast show, and the very engaging thing here is that when the year when I born, like in 2010, since then she's doing her podcast, and she has recorded over 1,000 plus podcasts. She's kind of like my mentor in this podcast field, and I've already learned a lot from her, especially empathy. So
Mm.
hi Dab, how are you, and welcome to the show.
Hello, hello. Okay, you make me feel old, but it's so funny. I hadn't realized that I started the podcast the year you were born. Um, and thank you so much for your kind words. I also learn from you. And I think that's what's so important about all of this is learning from each other.
Exactly, Dave. um, I was not trying to mention, your age. I'm just mentioning this because to show that how experienced host you are,
Right.
in this
Well, thank you.
podcasting field.
Thank you.
So, Deb, the people who don't know about you, could you tell us about your story and
Sure.
about yourself?
So I am a business owner. I founded my own company over 20 years ago. And it's called Wise Women Communications. We are a full service marketing agency, and I was virtual and working from home long before many other people were doing that, because what we do is we do just the projects a company needs, and then that's all we do for them. So if, say, they need a website, new logo, whatever, we do that and we're done. So then they're not hiring staff to do that. They're hiring a consultant to do that. And I love doing that. Like I said, been doing that for over 20 years. I really, really love my podcast, which is the Business Power Hour. And as Fahad mentioned, I have over 1,000 episodes. We do 2 a week. And what I love about it more than anything is meeting people from around the world. And I did interview Fahad on my podcast, so people will have to go and look for that. But and even after 1,000 plus episodes, I still learn something every single time. And I think that's one of the important things. And then several years ago, I started an initiative to help those who are dealing with cancer, and it's called Trying Not to Die. Live.
Wonderful. I was really curious about this, try
Mhm.
not to die life, because it's really, you just took a very great initiative, starting this amazing organization, because I see many people suffering
Mhm.
from cancer, because cancer is really a very
Mhm.
strange disease. So, Deb, you're doing your podcast, as I mentioned, since
Mhm.
some years,
Mhm.
you know. So, could you tell us, was that still the business power hour, or before? What was the name of your
Sure.
podcast before?
Well, originally, I actually went into a radio station and recorded live. We and my guests would come in, and at that point, that was when social media was really first starting. So I called it the socialite. And we talked, my guests were talking about how to use social media for business. Things like, uh, uh, should your business have a Facebook page? What should you do on LinkedIn? All of those various things. And of course, that long ago, there weren't really a lot of options. MySpace still existed, and Facebook was kind of ramping up, but more for personal use. TikTok didn't exist, Instagram didn't exist, and so it was much easier. And I really loved that. And then I moved from Denver to Atlanta, so could not go into the station any longer. We still did the interviews on Skype, and so that was really good. And then I transitioned to from there to working with C-Suite Network, and that's kind of a better fit for a business podcast. And the cool thing is, because of technology, so originally Skype and now Zoom and all sorts of other platforms, I can pre-record my interviews, which is so good, because that means I can interview people from around the world. We set a time that works best for each person. Before I interviewed some people at 4 o'clock in the morning their time because of the time change, right? And so, I think that's been one of the fun things to really watch, is how the technology has evolved through the years, because it's been absolutely incredible what we can do.
Exactly. I'm totally agreed with you.
Mhm,
Technology has changed very strangely, I would say. Like, um, we're still, technology just won the race, we could say. We humans are still
mhm,
very slow in some things, but
mhm,
technology and AI has this ability to
mhm,
recognize, like it is still can recognize the disease as well. If someone is suffering
mhm,
from a strange disease and he doesn't
mhm,
know what it is,
mhm,
he can
right.
go to AI, and AI
Mhm,
can recognize the disease. So,
mhm,
Deb,
mhm.
could you tell us about your childhood? Like, first, I'm trying to, explore your personal life journey. So,
Sure.
how's your childhood like, and which kind of person you were, you know, in
Well,
your
I
childhood?
had an absolutely wonderful childhood. I grew up in the mountains of Colorado at an elevation of over 8,000 feet. And so way up there, where we had snow every month. Now, like it would melt in the summer, but there were times where it would snow in June, July, and August. And I'm an only child. It's a very small community, and it is completely surrounded by mountains. So in the winter, when it would snow a lot, we couldn't get out. And so I learned, you have a lot of stuff in your freezer, you have a lot of food like that. But it was, it was a perfect time to be a child, because we didn't have a lot of the dangers and things like that. And of course, this was long before we had computers, and things like, now you'll love this. We had three, just three television channels. And there was no HBO, there was no Netflix, there was no anything like that. We had ABC, CBS, and NBC here in the United States. And that was all, that was all you got. And so that's been another one of the things. But, because I think of all of that, I spent so much time outside with my friends. I was also very involved in my school. Now, again, it's a very small area. My graduating class, and we were the only high school in the area, my graduating class had 32, just 32 students. The next closest town was over 65 miles away. So, it was really, so you really got to know the people that live there very, very well. And it's funny, I'm still Facebook friends and personal friends with a lot of them, but it was, like I said, a very wonderful time to grow up.
Wonderful, wonderful. Like you really got the golden time. I would say golden
Mhm.
childhood. We
Right.
have now social
Mhm.
media, which is negatively affecting the child's brain, and putting
Mhm.
all the negative things. And you didn't had that. You just
No.
had your physical friends, and which
Right.
you got
Right.
their
Yeah.
physical bonding. So it's really
Mhm.
amazing that. So, what are some overlooked habits that quietly erode someone's credibility online?
I think the thing to remember when you're online is it can be seen by anyone, anytime. You might think that you're just saying something to your friends, and you might have whatever platform you're using just your friends, or set so that only your friends can see it. But there's nothing that stops you or stops them from, say, doing a screenshot. So maybe you're complaining about something or worse, and they take a screenshot and you can get in trouble. I remember years ago when one of my nieces was on Facebook, And her parents were not on Facebook, but they trusted me to kind of watch over her. And she was, I don't know, she was about 14 or so, so fairly young, younger than you. And her parents were gone for the weekend. So she was, and she was home alone. And she was obviously very responsible, and that's why they were able to leave her home alone. So she's probably older than that. She's probably 16 or so. But on Facebook, she was posting, "Hey, my parents are gone all weekend." Now, she wasn't saying, "Let's have a party," or do anything like that. But I immediately contacted her and I said, "You need to not do that." And she said, "Well, but it's only my friends who saw it." I said, "But do any of them have brothers that are a little scary that you might not want to know that you're home alone?" And of course, she'd never thought of that. And I think that's the thing to remember is, in many ways, there is no privacy. Like I said, we just need to plan on anybody can see anything. I know people who have lost their jobs because of posts that they have done on social media. I saw somebody one time post on one of the sites. My boss pays me so little that I steal from him whenever I can. Right. And then she wondered when she got fired. They'll announce maybe that they're looking for another job, and they forget that their current employer could see that and not be happy that they're looking for another job. Or even just simple posts. So I taught college level classes for several years, and I would not follow my students. I told them, I said, "No, after you're not my student, I will do that. But I don't want you telling me, oh, I couldn't get my homework done because we had a family emergency. But I will have seen on Facebook or, wherever that you were partying all weekend." So just always remember that somebody could say, and it also lasts forever. Don't ever think, oh, if I deleted it, it can still be out there. So just don't say anything that you don't want. I tell people, don't say anything that you don't want your mother, your spiritual advisor, or your boss to see, right?
That was horrible. We often assume that no one is seeing, so do that.
Mhm.
But there is still privacy, and we have to take care of this physically as well.
Mhm.
But
Right.
people are more than virtual than physical.
Mhm.
Like, they are not literally living in physical world. They are living in their
Mhm.
virtual world, where they
Right.
have
Right.
lots of social media and
Mhm.
all that.
Yeah.
So when you
And
reflect on
and of
your
course, here in the United States, we've got big politics that are dividing people, right? And I always tell people, watch what you post with that. Politics and religion. I mean, that can be something that is divisive to people. And it is still your choice as to what you want to post. And so I'm never going to tell somebody, "Ooh, don't do that." Now I might tell somebody younger to, but yeah, if it's an adult and they're saying, "We love this politician, we hate this politician," whatever. I mean, they obviously have the right to do that, but they also need to remember that, especially if they're on social media and clients or potential customers are there, it could drive them away. And so keep that in mind also.
wonderful, wonderful. That was a great point here. So when you reflect on your early career, what advice um, would your current self give to that version of them?
I think one of the things I would say is it'll be okay. Don't stress over it. But take advantage of learning as much as you can, whether it's in school or for getting mentors, whatever it is. Just soak up as much knowledge as you can, even if it's not something that might interest you. Maybe you want to, even watching, learning things about history. I wish I had learned more about world history when I was younger. Now, obviously I can start learning now, but yeah, when you're younger, just take advantage. And at the same time, remember you got to have fun. Don't always be quite so serious. Enjoy life. You're going to have enough times of having to be serious.
Wonderful, wonderful. enjoy your life. We usually get
Mhm,
depressed. We usually get,
mhm,
very serious, because we think that being serious is a helpful or useful thing, but actually,
mhm,
um, when you should apply it, you should experience it, practically as well, that when you start being serious, it doesn't really works, but when you
mhm,
enjoy your every moment of your life, you start realizing that
mhm,
you are in any world and you are living your life,
mhm.
so
Right.
that's really wonderful.
And I know it's really hard to be a teenager. I remember being a teenager, but it's okay. Things will be okay. But I do want to add in there, if you are struggling, then please reach out to somebody and ask for help. Whether it's a parent, a teacher, a spiritual person, whoever, if you really are truly struggling, it's okay to ask for help. One of the things I tell people is it is the strongest thing you can do to ask for help.
Wonderful. But unfortunately, we don't have such people in our world. Some very few left like Deb, who
Mhm,
are willing to help others. Because usually what people do, that take advantage of someone's
mhm,
weakness. When you share
mhm, mhm,
something, your weakness with others, that usually take advantages. So
mhm.
it's very difficult to search such pupils like as Deb here, who are always willing to help, and then to ask them for help.
And teachers might be a good place to ask for help. Um, and trusted adults, because I know teenagers, I was a teenager. We don't always want to tell our parents what's going on, right? But and sometimes maybe it's there's uh, I what I want to say is you're not alone. I think is maybe the biggest thing. So, try and find somebody, because it is serious. And obviously, there are very serious things going on in the world, and in our personal lives. But it's, reach out if you need help.
Exactly. So if LinkedIn disappeared tomorrow, what would be your
Mhm.
first move to reconnect with your audience?
So I pretty much only use 2 platforms, LinkedIn and Facebook. I do have an Instagram account, but that was just to make sure that I had my name. I'm not sure I could log in there anymore. I'm not on TikTok, and I'm not on any of the others. So I guess it would be Facebook. And I do use, like, I know that LinkedIn is 100% business. Facebook, I kind of do a combination of personal and business. And so maybe I would have to shift and do more business on it. But it's funny, there are always things that come along and replace those. So it'd be interesting to see if LinkedIn went away, what would be the next thing that came along.
Exactly. Maybe there would be another platform.
Hmm. Hmm.
Somebody will create it as they
Right.
did with LinkedIn. If
Hmm.
LinkedIn
Hmm.
would disappear.
Hmm.
So, Deb, lots of people have their own definition of success. Like, if you
Hmm.
ask me, so to me success is, whatever you want in your life and you get it, not only
Hmm.
money, not only in the shape of money, not only in the shape of house, a luxury life, but
Hmm.
anything, you are successful. So how do you define
Hmm.
success today, and how has the definition evolved over the years?
Oh, it's definitely evolved over the years. And I think it's, now, and maybe this is because I have faced a cancer diagnosis, and that does change your perspective on things. But, success used to be more about the money, the things, all of those. And as you said, for each person, it's very different. But for me, it's what friends do I have around me? Am I enjoying life? If excuse me, if something happened and I were gone tomorrow, how would people remember me? would they remember me? And so to me, success is sometimes getting through the day, right? And not being quite as stressed over things.
Wonderful. I would say is it is the best definition of success till now that I've ever heard. Um, exactly. What's your take on vulnerability in business content? Where's the line between real and oversharing?
Um, and again, that changes by person because I'll look at something and think, "Whoa, I wouldn't post that." It's I think it's kind of that if you think and again, it is very personal. There are people, and we see it all the time, right, who share everything. They have no filter. They're just going to share everything, and they don't care. Uh, you know, I don't want to share anything that could hurt someone I know. I and uh, or embarrass them. Now there are times where my husband's like, "Really? Did you have to post that?" But I know he's just joking. Um, but I do kind of watch that, and I also, my clients are my connections on LinkedIn and on Facebook. So I do keep them in mind. Are they going to read something that I have posted and think, we don't want to work with her? Or future clients, and so it's just kind of, again, an individual choice. And there are times where I'm ready to post. Oh, I'm ready to post. And then I think, probably shouldn't post. So maybe it's that internal voice that says, it's okay. You don't need to post that, and pay attention to those voices.
Exactly. Um, I would say people have their own perspective of thinking,
Mhm,
related to
mhm.
different kind of things.
Right.
Like
Mhm,
if I would ask anything about physical, about virtual world, so people have their own
mhm,
words to describe that.
mhm. Right.
Is there a moment from your podcasting journey that didn't go as planned, but you taught you something powerful?
There so I'm currently editing episode 1069. So yeah, I've been doing it a really long time. I think it's to always be prepared because sometimes I haven't been. And so I make sure that if it's an author and they want to talk about their book, they have to provide it for me. Now a digital copy is fine. Um, but I want to read it before we can discuss it. It is a business podcast, so there's not really like, we're not really talking about personal details, and I do, I want to respect my guests' privacy and things like that. So I'm not going to ask them anything that I think might embarrass them or cause any issues. But I think the times where things haven't gone as well as I had wanted to, and I always blame myself. It's never my guest's fault. If it hasn't gone quite the way I've wanted, it's because I wasn't prepared enough. And so always make sure that no matter what, you've done your research.
Exactly, you have done your research,
Mhm,
because if there is a problem in guest side, so it is
mhm,
fine because
mhm,
it is on them. They have to take up that.
mhm,
But if that
mhm,
problem is on our side, then we are
mhm,
totally responsible for that.
mhm,
For the listeners, for the viewers, and for the guest
mhm.
as well.
Right.
Okay, so what's one belief about personal branding you had 5 years ago that you no longer agree with?
I think personal branding can be a little fluid. It's not anything that we are this way and we're not going to change it. And that's okay. I believe that personal brand is very important, starting with teenagers, but it is something that changes. And so, what worked for us 5 years ago, and the funny thing is, 5 years ago would be pre-COVID, and so what were we then, and what are we now? And I think we get kind of caught up in, but this is the way I've always done it. That's all right. We can change. We can adapt.
Wonderful, Deb. Wonderful. Wonderful as always. Thank you so much, Deb Career, for giving me your precious and valuable time for the conversation. I'm very for the conversation we just had. So
Thank
let
you.
people meet you soon with another podcast with another amazing guest. Till then, stay peace and